Welcome to Forum 360 for a Zoom edition to our global outlook with a local view. I'm Leslie Ungar, your host today. When I was in junior high, and we called it junior high back then, my dad and I would be in the barn on a Saturday, and the radio didn't have many stations like it does today. I remember my dad would have on a talk radio show that I believe was hosted by George Forbes, then president of Cleveland City Council. I remember this contentious tone between him and all the callers. A few weeks ago, I met the very, very newly installed president of Cleveland City Council. Talk about a 180-degree difference. Known as someone who collaborates, from an outside perspective, it appears that this president is about as different from that president as a person could be. I present to you and welcome Ward 6 Councilman and new President of Cleveland City Council, Blaine Griffin. Welcome to Forum 360. And let me just say that as there are empty bookcases behind you, you have, as we tape this, you have been in office exactly 1 week.
Yes, about
Correct?
1 week, exactly 1 week, or actually not quite 1 week. We got sworn in last Monday evening.
Monday evening, so not even 1 week. So
Right.
I guess my first question then has to be, in the 1 week that you've actually been in the job, that you've been around, and that you have observed others as president, what has been a surprise in your first week as Cleveland City Council president?
The enormity of people, the gravity of the job has been enormous. I mean, just the enormous amount of support that you have and people that are willing to call and just say that they want to be helpful, that they want to be supportive, and just the amount of people that love Cleveland, that love this region, that
That's
just
nice to
really
hear.
want this region to succeed.
That is really nice to hear. Now,
Hey Leslie.
Yes?
I gotta stop you for a second. Your necklace is rubbing against the microphone.
okay, let me take it off.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to take your necklace off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I just. Okay, I got it. All right, hang on. Let me just do it without. If I can. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, we're good. So you can continue on with the next question then.
Okay. Sorry about that. We're going to continue on.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Okay. Now, before I go to the present, there is not a lot of information out there on you. Now, in a day of social media and, you know, with elected officials or celebrities or even normal people, we know what they ate for dinner, we know, when they go to the bathroom. How have you made it this far with so little presence in social media?
On the ground, the most important thing for me is to be authentic. I really have what I call a boardroom to the streets personality. I can spend time with executives and CEOs in boardrooms and have a cozy, great relationship with them about the future of the city, but I also spend an enormous amount of time in the street, in the local pubs, in the churches, in community centers, in local recreation centers, because I really think it's important for people to be able to touch and talk to the person who represents them. So that's going to take some adjustment, because I really like to be out in the street, as we call it, in the neighborhood. However, with this job, it's going to require me to have a lot more interaction with the broader public, because now I represent 17 members of council in every neighborhood in Cleveland.
Now, if you could introduce yourself to people, I think that whether it's Clevelanders may be more familiar with you, but now that we look at Northeast Ohio and an audience in Northeast Ohio, what would you like people in Northeast Ohio to know about you?
I'm a real Northeast Ohio kid that really ended up in what I call our capital city of Northeast Ohio. I'm originally from Youngstown, Ohio.
Are you really?
Graduated from high school, yes.
My parents are from Youngstown, Ohio.
Great
The
people
old
in
Rayan.
Youngstown. Oh, well, okay, so I went to Woodrow Wilson, so I'm a South Sider.
Okay.
But I did spend time on the North Side. Youngstown's a very small city, so we all know each other. I went to college at Malone College in Canton, Ohio, which is a great university that I was fortunate to be a basketball player there, and more importantly, just got a great education and met great people at that university. And then small town kid that moved up to the big city of Cleveland, Ohio, and I just love this city. I tell everybody, Cleveland's a big city, but a small town. And I really gotten a chance to really know the people of this city. I love the sports teams of this city. I love the arts and culture of the city. The food is great. I mean, great food establishments. And then, things like I did this weekend where I went to the Three Kings event with the Hispanic Police Officers Association. I'm just an everyday guy that likes to really be around people. And if you're going to be in these kind of jobs, you got to love people to lead people.
So can you explain why someone living in Cleveland or perhaps around Cleveland, what they should know and why they should care about what happens in Cleveland City Council?
Well, Cleveland City Council and Cleveland is the heartbeat of the region. And, Cleveland City Council is the people on the ground that are really trying to make the community strong, that make Cleveland strong. Our futures are inextricably tied. A lot of people believe that, Cleveland's over there and we're over here. But I would tell you that some of the socioeconomic issues that we have in our community don't stay isolated to Cleveland. So it's important to have, interaction with regional leaders as Cleveland City Council so that you can understand what some of the things that we're doing in order to try to strengthen our community because as we go and as we function, the region functions. So we're the heartbeat. We represent the heart of Cleveland, the heart of the region.
Now, I'm curious to ask you this question. You supported a different candidate for mayor, and now your job is partly to work with the mayor. So how does that work? That to work with someone that knows that you didn't originally support them?
Well, a couple of things. I would just tell you that number one, Cleveland's a tough city, and I'm an ex-athlete. I'm used to competing, and then once the game is over, then I shake hands with my opponent and I move on. And I supported a very good friend, a very good man who happened to be my council president, who happened to have a 25-year relationship with me. And he was somebody who I thought had the skill set to lead the city. I never went negative, never crossed the line with the present mayor. And quite frankly, I have respect for him, and we've already been meeting weekly to establish our relationship so that we can move this city forward. I live by the Governor Jim Rhodes philosophy that you never get so mad at a person that you can't wake up and have breakfast with him in the morning. So I move on, he's moved on, and it's about how we make this city work.
That's actually very nice to hear.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I found out in preparing for this interview was that your election breaks a long-standing City Hall tradition that calls for a white council president when the mayor is black and vice versa. Now, you were quoted as saying that you believe the city has evolved past these racial lines, as evidenced by, the new mayor's win. 1 week into your term as city council president, can you talk to us about have we evolved past those racial lines in that tradition?
Well, I would tell you that you have a lot of talented African-American people of color that are in leadership positions. And I was really proud that my colleagues had enough confidence in me to move past those kind of unwritten rules. I would tell you that past council presidents, also encouraged us to really look at who's best and how can we move this city forward. I will tell you that, even though you have two African Americans that run a major city in America, that racism still does exist. There are still some people who are, not rooting for our success. And, at the end of the day, there's a tremendous, the gravity of this moment doesn't escape me. There's a tremendous amount of expectations on myself and Mayor Bill. However, I'm going to do the job for everybody. I mean, even though I'm African-American and he's African-American, I don't care what ladder of the social stratosphere you're on, whether you're black, white, male, female, straight, gay. My job is to work for everybody in this city.
Now, speaking of that, your Ward 6 is known as one of the most diverse wards, encompassing some of the East Side, University Circle, Slavic Village, Little Italy. What do you think it says about Cleveland in 2022 that an African American represents such a diverse ward?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think that Cleveland is my ward prepared me for my position as council president because my ward, like Cleveland, is a Dickensian model of a ward where you have the best of times and the worst of times. As the Tale of Two Cities said, you have very affluent parts of my ward, which is like Little Italy, University Circle, and other places. But then you have crushing poverty and high rates of infant mortality, lead exposure. So just having that balancing act around the city of Cleveland to juggle priorities is critical. Let me say this to you. I'm a small kid raised up in the shadow of abandoned steel mills in the city of Youngstown, Ohio. Have the privilege of being here in the great city of Cleveland. And I was raised by people and worked with people like my former mentor, the former mayor, Frank G. Jackson, that taught me how to take care of people. At the end of the day, that's all I want to do is take care of people. In the heart of hearts, that's what our job is to do, is to make sure that the people of Cleveland feel confident that they have a good quality of life and a solid foundation here in the city.
Now, although you worked for Mayor Jackson, you have only been an elected official for about 4 years. Can you tell us a high and a low to running for office? The first time you ran for office, can you give us a high and a low of going from being on a mayor's team to actually being the one running?
Well, I would tell you that a high was when we were able to pass a lead safe ordinance in order to make children lead safe in the city of Cleveland. It was a historic ordinance that really a lot of people applaud. And stay tuned this week. You're going to hear about a lot of exciting things that we're going to be doing around lead in the city of Cleveland and working with a lot of the healthcare institutions. So having that kind of collaboration and pulling that kind of umbrella together to address what I think is one of the most complex and vexing issues of our time was a high. A low, I would tell you, is any time that I lose a child to a a child to a shooting, whether it's a child that's, a victim of a homicide, or not even a child, a young person, a person that's an adult. Just watching people that are, just victims of homicide and senseless acts of violence. That's always a low for me. It keeps me up at night. And then also when you have some of the tragic shootings that we have when we have bad interactions between police and citizens, those bother me as well, because I know that most of the police come out to do a great job, a majority of them, and don't like to be tarnished by one bad actor.
What is one thing that would surprise us about running for office?
It's not what people think. It is not the celebrity, and you have more days where it's challenging, and you have more sleepless nights than you have the victories that I just talked about. There's a tremendous amount of pain that people are dealing with, and our job is to alleviate the burdens that these folks have, and it's kind of overwhelming at times. So you'll be surprised about that, and then what your family has to go through in order to do these jobs. It's not just you. Your wife can't go to the grocery store. Your children can't go to just play a game of basketball with somebody asking, well, if your dad could just do this, or can he do this, or can you tell your husband this, that, and everything else. So those things are, your whole family is elected when you're elected, and that's kind of a challenge because they didn't sign up to be on the ballot.
Now, you were in Mayor Jackson's administration, and then you ran for office. So was there an event or something that prompted you to not just be on a mayor's team, but to want to run for office?
Well, I would tell you that I had the greatest job in the world, and I worked for a person who I really liked, admired, and respected, in Frank G. Jackson. I was making pretty good money, and quite frankly, I was doing something that I love. But one thing that I learned is that when duty calls, you have to step up. We had a person who was in the council seat who fell ill, and when she became ill, she decided to resign, and she asked if I would fill that position. And duty called, and it was a neighborhood who I've served and ironically ran for council before and was unsuccessful. A neighborhood that I had lived in for 22 years and knew the people and understood the issues. So I stepped in. That's what we do as leaders sometimes. We step in when we're needed.
Today we are talking with Blaine Griffin, the newly elected Cleveland City Council president. I was small when Carl Stokes was first elected mayor. I still remember that night, the first major U.S. city to get an African American mayor. Does his legacy still have any meaning today, or is it just a part of the city's history?
It has a tremendous amount of meaning. As a matter of fact, we're in the process with a gentleman by the name of Rob Render to try to upgrade his monument at Lakeview Cemetery. We still hold him in high regard in this city. As a matter of fact, my first campaign, I actually mimicked his colors because orange and black were his colors. I went to orange and navy blue, but it was all to symbolize what Carl Stokes represents in this city. Carl Stokes represented so much more than just being the first Black mayor of a major city and breaking all of those barriers. He was really plugged into the civil rights movement very much as well. So yes, I'm still very good friend with a lot of his family members, and Carl Stokes will always run in the be somebody who we all revere, holding the highest reverence in this city.
What are some of your strengths that you think can help move Cleveland forward?
Well, I'm a collaborative leader. I really understand and know how to pull people together. I have always had a reputation of taking on some of the tough challenges that people have always said, don't do it because you're not going to be successful. And many have tried and haven't succeeded. And, I take on those challenges, and I take on those challenges because I value myself as a person who wants to fix things, a person who wants to get things done, a person who wants to really try to work hard to try to give people what they deserve. So I would tell you that that's one of my strengths. My weaknesses is, as a council person, you're asked to know a little bit about everything, but you're not asked to be an expert about one thing. And I would tell people that I may not be the smartest guy in the room or understand the topic matter of discussion, but what I will do is work the hardest in order to try to make sure that I understand the material. I tell people, and I'll just end with this, is that there's a song that I remember growing up saying that I'm the first one on the block and I'm the last one to leave. That's how I've survived and always been able to do well all my career.
So taking that collaborative effort and that perseverance, one of my favorite words, grit, taking that and looking at Cleveland 20, 30 years from now, what are some things that your vision for a Cleveland 2050 would look like?
Well, one of the things that I tell everybody is that we have to have a Cleveland that's equitable, that's able not just to serve the affluent people of our city. We have to be able to make sure that we do something to change the trajectory and change the narrative about being the poorest city in America, about being the worst city for Black women, about having high infant mortality rates, about dealing with lead exposure, housing insecurity, low educational attainment. We got to change those trajectories. We got to be able to tap into what our strengths are. Our strengths are our healthcare institutions, our water. As I look out right now, this fresh water source that we have, we represent 1/5 of the globe's water. Making sure that we do something about violent crime in this city, making sure that we make City Hall more efficient and a welcoming place to do business. I want Cleveland to be a place where people can touch, feel, and see change. I don't want to just go through an academic exercise, even though I think metrics and percentages are important. But at the end of the day, if people wake up and say, I really feel that Cleveland is moving in the right direction and really can touch, feel, and see that change, is what I really want to accomplish in this position.
Now, when people say a change in their neighborhoods, we want to see a change in neighborhoods, can you tell us, what does that mean?
Well, I would tell you that, people remember the good old days. And people remember Cleveland when it used to be middle-class neighborhoods where you had, neighborhoods where you had all of the amenities that you needed, like grocery stores and doctor's offices, veterinarian clinics, and everything else that you can imagine, restaurants. We're all in walking distance. We're all right there in strong neighborhoods. When I go to places like Little Italy and Fairfax and all of these families that live in those neighborhoods in Buckeye and East 93rd Street, they just want to be back in the good old days when they bought their homes and they actually knew their neighbors. The kids were able to play until the street lights came on, and they just want to go back to that time. And people deserve that. People deserve a good quality of life, no matter where they live at, and their zip code should not dictate what kind of quality of life that they have just because they live in certain areas where that American dream, that Cleveland dream, that Cleveland pride is elusive. So we really have to deal with that and address those things.
Now, it may be a help to accomplish these things. You are selected unanimously by 16 council members to be president. I think that's pretty amazing in this polarized world, even though they are all Democrats, which is kind of an interesting dynamic, but still, for 16 people to agree unanimously, why do you think that it was a unanimous choice?
Well, I have to give my competitors credit because there were a couple of people on council, and we just said from the outset that it was very important for us to be unified as a council. So we were not going to be toxic during this competition, which made it easier for us to come together at the end of the race in order to say what we wanted to do as a council. And a lot of those people who competed against me are a part of my leadership team, or a part of my that I made them chairs.
So it really is a team of rivals.
That's what I was going to get to. One of one of the books that I love is Doris Goodwin Kern's Team of Rivals. Mm-hmm. And Lincoln is one of my favorite people. We actually share the same birthday, February 12th. And I will tell you that, I totally get it and understand how he was successful as a president, because you really have to sometimes embrace people that have different thought processes, and iron sharpens iron where I come from. So even though we competed, we never got toxic, we never crossed the line. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I think we'll have a stronger council for it.
Now, before we get to the lightning round, I have one last question to ask you. Cleveland is home to some of the world's finest healthcare institutions, but yet Cleveland has some of the worst and highest COVID numbers. You know your constituents, you talk with them, you ask them to support you, you've gotten to know their families. Why have people refused vaccinations and mask wearing in such high numbers?
I think it is a lot of distrust, but let me say this, it's not just distrust of the hospitals and the healthcare systems, it's distrust of systems, period. Mm-hmm. People distrust government, they distrust business, they distrust, healthcare institutions, they distrust the media. People just don't have a lot of trust right now, and there's a lot of misinformation that slips in and undermines everybody when that kind of distrust is not in place. That's one of the reasons why we have a tremendous job to do as elected officials, and quite frankly, across the spectrum, even yourself in the fourth estate, to really restore trust by making sure that we put out factual information and make sure that people understand that when Blaine Griffin or Leslie Ungar speaks, that is based on fact and not hyperbole.
In a word or two, I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to ask you to name a restaurant, but is there a favorite kind of cuisine that you have in Cleveland?
Italian food is always amazing. And I have the best Italian food district on Mayfield and Little Italy ever.
Yes, you do. And see, if I really was a gotcha kind of journalist, I would make you name one of those, but we'll just leave it at that area, okay?
Don't get me in trouble with all of those.
I won't get you in trouble. If you were traveling outside of Ohio, in a couple words, what would you tell someone about Cleveland who has never been to Cleveland?
You're missing it. Mm-hmm. You're missing it. You're missing it. Everybody that comes tells you that this is a great city.
Your favorite season in Cleveland?
Fall.
Oh. The last podcast you listened to?
Mansfield Fraser, Chateau Huff.
Wow. Your favorite musician or your favorite genre of music?
George Clinton, P-Funk All-Stars.
Wow, that's pretty specific. Okay. What is one thing that you would tell your 29-year-old self?
Be patient, use focus, control, and patience.
And my last question, which I think I'm going to ask everyone in 2022, what gives you hope
The people. The people. The people of the city of Cleveland give me hope because they really, really are a tenacious group of people that really love this city. And this is just a great city. The people of this city make it great.
Thank you. We have been talking today to our guest, Cleveland City Council President Blaine Griffin, and we add our best wishes to his presidency. Cleveland history and prominence has been an integral part of America's history. For a long time, Cleveland was the 6th largest U.S. city. Cleveland grew into a major manufacturing center, largely due to its location on that river that we talked about in our interview. The Cleveland Museum of Art, the Museum of Natural History, the orchestra, the Playhouse Square, once a major stop on the Underground Railroad, and Standard Oil was founded here. Now the reins are turned over to a new mayor and our guest today, the new Cleveland City Council President, Blaine Griffin. We thank him for joining us and wish him well on his journey. I'm Leslie Ungar. Thank you for joining us today on Forum 360 for your global outlook with a local view. I have time for one last question. Is Baker Mayfield going to be back with the Browns next year?
Yeah, he needs to come back, and he's a gritty, tough guy. We just want him to be healthy, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President, for joining us today.
Thank you, Leslie.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.